Hello gamers and welcome to the new episode for Endgame content series. This video is a part of an ongoing series. If you're new to Guild Wars 2 endgame content, you're at the right place, because you can check these videos in my channel. This series has everything you need to know to start your endgame journey, and now we're starting to learn specializations from scratch. I made a poll in the channel which classes was wanted as a guide, and Specter Thief was the most voted. This guide will get you to a point with Specter Thief, only advanced training will be left to achieve after watching this video. And I will explain this, compressing pages of information to an easily understandable way, so brace yourselves. First things first, we are going to start from the basics. All the Thief specs has this shiny cool looking bar here. This bar is called initiative bar. Your actions cost initiative, so you can do a limited amount of actions one after another until you deplete your bar. When you use your skills, and by that I mean your weapon skills, you spend from your initiatives. You can use limited amount of skills one after another until you deplete your initiative bar. And then you wait for it to fill again to be able to use more skills. But it doesn't, how do I put it, make your combat awkward. The bar fills up pretty fast, so fight goes fluently. Of course, during the combats, you need to put some skills between the time you spend your initiatives and until they come back. So you'll notice Thief DPS rotations will include initiative spending and things you do until they come back. Initiative bar works like this for all Thief specs. And by all Thief specs, I mean 3 PvE builds still used today. For example, there's Core Thief, which uses an older build. People in World vs. World and PvP sometimes use these older builds, so I can't speak for PvP or other custom builds, so when I say Thieves work this way, take it as I'm talking about still viable PvE Thieves I counted. These 3 builds can be used in PvE and game content, so that's why we only include them. Even though this bar works same for all Thieves, its purpose is different for each of them. For example, for Power Thief, you have a short and strong bursts, so you deplete your initiative bar during these short high burst times. But for Specter Thief, the more you deplete your initiative bar, the more DPS you have. That means you need to keep your initiative bar depleted as much as possible during encounters. Now that we have come to weapon and utility skills, this will be the most complicated part of this guide, because I will explain skills while also giving you some idea about where do we use those skills in our rotation, but don't be intimidated because I won't just go you use this in this order. I will explain the logic behind it, which will include some trait line detailing, so you will be consciously doing that rotation, so just relax and let's continue. We need to keep the initiative bar depleted, and we use weapon skill 3 for that, and the reason for this is a skill with the highest DPS. It's as basic as that. We also use auto attacks to stack conditions on the enemy. Auto attacks are one of the main DPS sources for your Specter Thief because we are Condi class, so do not interrupt your auto attack chain. If you have ever played a class that uses Scepter as a weapon, you might be familiar with Scepter's Condi stacking with auto attack chains. Works the same way here. And when we are on our weapon bar during the combat, we don't use any other skills. You use 3 to deplete your initiative bar and do auto attack to keep your condition stacks on the boss at maximum. That's it. I'll also talk about utility skills and how they affect your rotation, but first I want to go through Shroud form. Scepter Thief DPS rotation goes between weapon bar and Shroud form. You want to make the most of the Shroud form's DPS, so when you go in the form, you want to have your initiative bar already depleted. Another thing Shroud form is good for, it gives shield to 5 other people. Shroud form gives shield when you go in and out of the form. which makes Specter class a true endgame spec, because the more you go into the endgame content, fast clears, etc., people tend to bring less heal to have more DPS. So this class, being a pure DPS and still giving a shield naturally in its rotation, makes it indispensable in the endgame content. That's why you probably see a lot of Specter Thieves when you're watching raid competitions or fractal competitions or really good players doing endgame content. And there's a trick to give bigger shields when you leave the Shroud form, because in the Shroud form you will be gaining stacks thanks to this trait you see here. The most you can get is 5 stacks. With 5 stacks you will be giving the maximum amount of shield. So logically, the rotation you do when you're going in and out of the Shroud form is focused on having at least 4, but ideally 5 maximum stacks. On your Shroud form you use all your skills except third skill. This third skill is a small leap skill which is used for CC, but we have better sources of CC, so this skill is almost always ignored. One thing I can add from my personal experiences, when you mistakenly click the skill on your rotation, it is one of those skills that will make you feel your DPS dropping, because you spend too much time with leap animation, which you can do a couple of auto attacks or cast 2 more skills instead of that. There are 2 ways of doing this. One is the short Shroud rotation and the second one is the long one. On either way, we start with the second skill and we finish with the second skill. On the short rotation you do 2-4-5-2. On the long one you do 2-4-5-2-2. It's pretty straightforward, start with 2, ignore the third skill and finish with 2. I said we almost always do the long rotation. The only times we do the short rotation is when we have our utility skill cooldowns ready. Because our Venoms and our Trap are the highest DPS sources, we don't want to make them wait just to stay a little bit longer on the Shroud form. So check your Venom and Trap cooldowns before you go in the Shroud form. If they'll be ready before your Shroud rotation finishes, do the short rotation. This is maybe the most complicated part of this class to get right during the fights. There's a small problem with Shroud form skill, which is it doesn't have any cooldown when you go in the Shroud form, so you can go out of the Shroud form immediately. So you sometimes misclick F2 twice in the heat of the battle and your DPS drops a lot because this mistake messes your rotation up too badly. Some people think that's a design error. I also don't see any reason why it shouldn't have any cooldown when you go in the Shroud form, so there's that. Specter Thief has 2 F skills. Siphon, meaning your F1, is used as a casual skill in the rotation to gain initiatives and to do DPS. If you want to see things related to this skill on your trait line, this skill, although it's not technically a steal skill, counts as a steal skill. If you've ever played Condi Daredevil before, you probably know these Venoms. They are perfect passive damage, so we use them as Specter Thieves too. Now these Venoms gives you stacks. You automatically use them with auto attacks on the enemy. What makes these Venoms too good is that you share them with 4 other people. By sharing these poisons with this many people, you increase your party's passive damage a lot, which again makes Specter Thief a really good class for endgame content. So the good side of these Venoms I think you'll find interesting, when you share these Venoms with your teammates and they damage the enemy with these Venoms, their Venom DPS counts as your DPS on the DPS meter. This is also why Specter Thief has 34k solo benchmark and 38k benchmark when with a group, because you increase the whole party's passive damage, yes, but that DPS counts as your DPS on the DPS meter, so your benchmark is higher when you're with a group. Bad side of it is that Venom do not stack. So you can only have 1 thief per 5 people. Because if you have 2 thieves and both of them uses their Venoms on the group, only the first one will benefit from it. The second thief's Venoms goes to waste, which will make the whole group lose DPS. You have probably seen Condi Thieves doing 50k openers in fractals, that's thanks to their precasted Venoms. Same for raids too. So take the venoms out of the equation, Condi Thieves become set Thieves. The last utility skill is Trap. This is the highest Condi DPS we can get besides Venoms. But when you are using the Trap, you should try to be precise about it because this is such a hard skill to use when boss moves a lot. Let's talk about the two ultimate choices used with Specter Thief. For our ultimate, we basically use the Thieves Guild because this is the ultimate with the highest DPS. And if we want CC, we get Basilisk Venom. Basilisk Venom can carry encounters, so never underestimate it. Think about Nightmare Fractals on CM. It carries Mama. It carries that boss before the last one, heavily relying on CC. Basilisk carries CM raid encounters too. But timing the Basilisk can be a little tricky, because bosses sometimes become invulnerable and a few seconds later their break bar appears. So if you give the Basilisk to people when boss is invulnerable, most people just leave their characters on auto attack. They will waste the Venom. So either people you do the content with has to be aware and stop attacking to spend the Basilisk stacks on the right moment, or you have to time it better. And sadly, second is always expected. The second CC of Specter Thief is Pistol Headshot. It's the fourth skill of Pistol, accompanied with Specialization signet on it to make your CC stronger. If you need an instant CC, meaning you need to CC that thing in 3 seconds or 2 seconds, you will use Pistol for that. Ideally, for the best outcome, you need to know the bosses. Think about Sleight, think about Sankoa Peak, any boss. They all have a pattern for when they'll need to be CC'd. Now that we're done learning the class, we should talk about how flexible this build is to bring it to different content. The answer is not much. One of the things you can do with your skills is that getting immobilized Venom instead of Trap. Trap is one of the best DPS skills we can get, but when bosses moves a lot and makes it impossible to hit them with Trap, this is the best option we can get. This Venom will also damage bosses thanks to this trait. About traits, there is only 2 traits you can change, and they are still argued among people, but try and see it for yourself. There is one trait in Specter's straight line you can change to help your team more, which is this one. If you change to this trait, you basically increase your team's endurance regeneration, so they will be able to dodge more. But changing to this trait will decrease your Shroud form 5th skill's DPS. It is not a major DPS loss, so some people think this is a great trait to have during fractals, for example. On the other hand, other thieves do not like to rely on this because there's a lot more you can do until you want to rely on that 2 more dodge during the encounter. You will notice you instantly get some amount of initiatives when you go in Shroud form thanks to this trait. If you change it with this one, you can CC the enemy when you use your Siphon, but you will have to give up on your initiatives when you go in the Shroud form. But this trait isn't that much favored because you already have Pistol and Basilisk for strong CC. That's about it for me. This got a lot more detailed than I intended to, so it might overload you with some information in this short amount of time, but I think I did my duty on teaching you both how to use Specter from scratch and including what's the logic behind it. I personally can't learn classes reading rotations and watching benchmark videos, so honestly, I wish I had this guide when I was learning Specter Thief. But I'm such a lucky person to have such wonderful people in my guild who answered my every question with patience, so I could systematically group this information and bring this guide to you. Also, I know I delayed these guides a little bit, but delaying these guides did good to us, so now I can bring you the new version of these classes after having those big balance patches. For example, new Elementalist now gives Alacrity, so the staff build I used needs some tweaks. In my staff Elementalist build, which we actively use in every raid encounter, doesn't exist in meta build website. So I'll prove it to you, you can utilize Staff Tempest in endgame content despite the developers. Of course, that is if they don't decide tomorrow Tempest now can't use stuff or something. Tempest guide will be here in 2 weeks. I'm currently working on it, so stay tuned. Your subscription is important for me, guys. Help me grow the channel. See you on the next guide and good luck.